I was glad when they said unto me, Let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. This is a day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Shalom Aleichem. Peace be unto you. And good morning to the followers of the way. Remember, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. And no man comes to the Father but by me. Good morning, Christopher. And thank you for teaching me to always believe in heroes. Beloved, we gather here today not as strangers, but as children of the same Heavenly Father, bound by the thread of shared faith and united in our shared love for our Savior, Jesus the Christ. We gather, even though it may be electronically, to celebrate, to learn, and to grow. I again thank you for participating in a fellowship service with us, even if it's in the context of what we do with our online ministry. We realize you have other choices, and we don't take you for granted. We thank you, and we love you in the Lord. Our text today is from the Gospel of Matthew, the 23rd chapter, verses 1 through 12. The title of the text today is Lifting Others is More Important Than Lifting Ourselves. The key theme in the text today is about humility, especially in leadership. A man was so proud of his new title as chairman of the finance committee that he started introducing himself to everyone that came to the church by saying, Good morning, I'm Joe, senior chairman of the finance committee. He'd say that to anyone who'd listen. One day his wife asked him to help clean the garage. Bob sighed and said, Honey, the senior chairman of the finance committee doesn't clean garages. She handed him a broom and said, Well, senior husbands do. Titles might sound important, but real leadership starts when we are willing to roll up our sleeves and serve. My first teaching point from our text today is that Jesus is teaching that we should lead by example and not by demand. Our text in verse 3 and 4 says, Therefore, do whatever they tell you and observe it. But don't do what they do, because they don't practice what they teach. They tie up heavy loads and are hard to carry, but then they put that on other people's shoulders. But they themselves aren't willing to lift a finger to move them. In this text, Jesus was condemning the Pharisees for their hypocrisy. At its core, being a hypocrite is about being two-faced. Beloved, there was a well-known guru whose emphasis was all about dieting, and he had a strict, healthy eating regimen. He consistently reminded others they needed to cut out sugar and eat more vegetables and never touch junk food. He gave passionate speeches. He posted meal plans. He even held a challenge to see who could go the longest without breaking the rules. One evening, after a long day of preaching the benefits of kale smoothies, this diet guru thought no one was watching as he quietly slipped into a fast food drive-thru. He ordered a burger and fries and a large milkshake, and he sat in his car savoring every bite. Just as he was finishing, he looked up only to see a group of his followers from the diet program staring through the window at him. Caught red-handed with ketchup on his face, he awkwardly smiled and said, Well, this is my cheat day, and it's important to understand balance. Oh, it's easy to preach something, but it's a lot harder to practice it. Like the diet guru, sometimes we can seem as though we're hypocrites when we're telling others what to do, but not living up to it ourselves. Oh, I just got to say, social media exploded recently when Richard Simmons, the health and diet fanatic, passed away. But the comments that were posted online were things like, "Are you kidding me? Mick Jagger outlived Richard Simmons?" I'm just saying, I'm not throwing anybody under the bus here. Back to our text. The Pharisees were the religious leaders of the time, and they were responsible for teaching God's law to the people. They sat in positions of authority and demanded strict adherence to the law from others, yet they failed to live by the same standards. It kind of reminds me of my favorite quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. It goes, "How can I hear what you say when what you do speaks so loudly in my ears?" Their leadership was oppressive. They placed heavy burdens on others, but didn't assist or share in the labor themselves. Jesus' criticism, it highlights the importance of leading by example rather than merely by words or commands. In the context of servant leadership, this passage teaches that true leaders don't impose expectations on others. True leaders don't ask people to do things that they're not willing to do themselves. As the setup saints help us to prepare the sanctuary every week, I get fussed at all the time as I try to help based on how my pain allows, only to get fussed, it's easy for me to say, only to get fussed at by the setup saints. The Pharisees' failure to practice what they preached, this just demonstrated their lack of compassion, their lack of authenticity, and it made them unfit to be spiritual leaders. Jesus contrasts their self-serving leadership with his own approach: humility, service, and leading through action. Jesus explains that those who seek to elevate themselves will ultimately be brought low. In contrast, those who humbly serve others without seeking recognition will be lifted up by God. And the way we do that, to serve others without seeking recognition, is by quietly volunteering to help someone, doing some random act of kindness for someone, realizing that there's someone in this church whose age may be presenting challenges for them to drive, but they're still doing the best they can. They drive over here to church every Sunday that their health allows. Offer to be a backup to them and say, "Can I come pick you up next Sunday and maybe we ride together to church? And then after church I'll head back to the house and drop you off, or we can go grab a cup of coffee, whatever you'd like." Pray for others. The prayer list that comes out weekly on our email blast has a list of people's prayer requests. Beloved, that's there for multiple reasons. One, pray for those on that list. And then look for them when you see them in service. Ask how they're doing. Ask how that son or how that daughter is. It makes all the difference in the world. That's how we build community. Let them know that you're praying for them. Support the church activities is another way to be able to demonstrate in some way that you can lift up others. Coming to events like movie night tomorrow night. Ask the person in front of you, "Are you coming to the movie? Why don't you come with me? I'll bring the popcorn. Why don't you bring a candy bar and we'll split it? Maybe afterwards we can go grab a bite to eat." Bring someone with you to the movies, and if it's a neighbor who's never been before, tell them you'll pay. You'll get that after church. Offer encouragement or support to someone. When you see someone on the prayer list, ask, is there something you can do to help? Beloved, we have so many folks in our church who spend the majority of the week alone and lonely. Stop by and offer to play a hand of Uno. Let me give you a heads up though. Be careful if you play with Chris. Chris doesn't like losing, and he's pretty good as well. So how does this text impact us today? Watch this. Getting older and giving orders. As we get older, sometimes we feel like we've earned the right to sit back and give commands. After all, we've paid our dues. I am the senior person. I've been here before. I know how this gets handled. Easily. Sometimes it's easy. Unfortunately, beloved, it's easy to slip into the habit of telling others what to do without being willing to step in and help. Sometimes we also need to acknowledge that if God has placed someone in charge, He's also placed you where you are to help, not always to challenge. Oh, let me say that again. If God has placed someone in charge, He's also placed you where you are to help, not to give orders. As Lady J liked to say, we are God's hands, His feet, His eyes, His ears. It doesn't say we're God's brain. Oh, let me keep going. So how do we live this? Servant leadership means rolling up your sleeves and doing the work alongside others, not just directing from the sidelines. Each of us can do better in this area. Consider helping someone with a task. Ask God to place on your heart who that is. It might be as simple as washing dishes. It might be a random act of kindness. Bake some cookies and drop off a few to some neighbors, even if they don't want them. They may have another friend in their card club that does want them, or see Lady J, especially if they're brownies. Offer to pick up a few things at the grocery store as you're heading on your way out. You'd be amazed how something simple like that is very much appreciated. Invite a couple neighbors to come over and watch a movie. Place an anonymous card of encouragement in someone's mailbox. Oh, I know one lady who paints these incredible stones that she simply places in people's mailboxes as a way to encourage someone. Lead by example, beloved. It builds stronger relationships. Here's an example. A boss was known for being all talk and no action. He loved holding long meetings, explaining how everyone should work harder and smarter. And one day, while giving one of his famous motivational speeches, a frustrated employee asked, "Boss, when's the last time you actually did any of this work yourself?" The boss replied, "Well, that's what I have you for." The employee muttered under his breath, like Elvis, "I think our motivation has just left the building." Beloved, it's always easier to tell other people what to do. But true leadership means being willing to do the work alongside people. Here's what I ask you to do this week as a call to action. This week, find an opportunity to get involved with something you usually delegate. Lead by doing and not by just telling. And watch how things go. Jesus was teaching, first point, lead by example, not by demand. Second teaching point, Jesus teaches that seeking approval from others, seeking the spotlight, is all about vanity. The text in this particular instance is verses 5 through 7. Vanity. Jesus is talking about seeking the approval of others. So here's a way to look at vanity. Do you do things because of how it makes you feel? Or do you do things because of how it makes other people feel about you? Oh, let me say that one more time. Do you do things because of how it makes you feel? Or do you do things because of how it makes other people feel about you? And if it's the latter, because of how you want people to feel about you, beloved, that's vanity. And in these verses, Jesus rebukes the Pharisees for their desires to be seen and praised by others. They were more concerned with appearances and outward recognition than they were with sincere devotion to God. Their need for attention led them to seek positions of honor and admiration rather than a deep and personal relationship with God. Oh, watch this, beloved. When we focus on impressing others with our status or our accomplishments, we lose sight of what truly matters, having an authentic, humble faith and humility. The Pharisees outwardly displayed religious devotion, but it masked the emptiness of their hearts. They wanted status. They wanted admiration more than they wanted an opportunity to serve God and others. So how does this text impact us today? In a world filled with social media, Facebook, Instagram, and more, it's always easy to seek validation from people far away, especially when we're apart from our families. We might take several pictures trying to post a perfect picture online, but we neglect making the genuine connections with the people who are right in front of us. Watch this, beloved. There was an elevator operator in a tall office building, and his job was to push the buttons and close the doors and gates and lift people and take them back to their desired locations. And he took great pride in his work. Every day he greeted everyone with a smile and kind words. He knew that his small actions could lift someone's spirit, even if just for a moment. One day, a regular rider on the elevator said, "You know, you always brighten my day. And it's not just the elevator that goes up. When I ride with you, you lift my mood too." Sometimes lifting people up doesn't require a grand gesture. It can be as simple as offering encouragement or a kind word. Beloved, when we serve others with humility, like that elevator operator, you lift them higher in ways that matter far more than recognition. There's some of you within the church that every time you approach me to say good morning, or as you're heading out the door after service, you just lift my spirits. Because you have that personality, that outward glow, that desire to just lift someone else's spirits, even though I know you well enough to know from your prayer requests that you're hurting and you're burdened. But I'm so grateful for those we have within the fellowship. My third and final teaching point: humility also attracts God's favor. The text says in verse 12, "Whoever exalts himself will be humbled, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted." Humility attracts the favor of God. Jesus flips the scripts on the norm. True greatness doesn't come from patting yourself on the back, but from humility. Jesus said, God elevates those who serve others selflessly. Here's an example. Here in Sola Vida, as we age, we face health challenges. It can be humiliating to ask for help or to accept our limitations. Somebody needs to hear me this morning. Society will often value independence, but real strength is sometimes shown through vulnerability and reliance on others. Hear me today and know this: accepting help is not weakness. Accepting help is an opportunity for others to serve and show the love of God. Beloved, I pray that you'll focus on ways that you can be a servant to others, because there, but by the grace of God, will be your turn. Even when you're struggling, there's someone else who is struggling more. Here's an example. A well-known pastor visited a large church to give a guest sermon, and while preparing, he noticed an elderly janitor cleaning the floors and quietly praying over each pew. Curious, the pastor asked him, "What do you pray for?" The janitor humbly replied, "I'm praying that each person who sits in these pews will be blessed and know the love of God." He said, "To some, my work might not seem like it's important, but I know God sees it." Beloved, I've been very focused on doing whatever God tells me. I rarely slow down to ask for help. Because so many people start to avoid you if they think you might ask for something. Even though I know I shouldn't push as hard anymore, since my wife and I had a fall in a local mall. Even if I start to do something, my wife and several people, some of the setup saints here, Nate and Mike and Rob and Reverend Baker and Andrew, these guys will call me out before I can do anything. Beloved, this week, reflect on areas where you need to humble yourself. Whether it's asking for help or offering it, or even receiving it. God honors those who serve with humility. There was a doctor, leaving you with a final story. In a small village, he'd been practicing medicine for over 40 years. He was beloved by everyone, but not because of his medical accolades and expertise, but because of how he treated every patient with kindness and humility. He would often work late into the night, making house calls for those who couldn't afford to come and see him. He never turned anyone away. And even when they didn't have the money to pay for the services, he still took care after people. One day, after years of serving his community, the doctor fell seriously ill and was hospitalized. As word spread, the entire village came together to support him. People lined up to donate blood, to cook meals, and to even cover his medical expenses. And when the doctor's family asked why they were being so generous, one villager said he never asked anything from us, but he gave everything to us. And now it's our turn to give back. This story reminds us that true humility and service will leave a lasting impact. The doctor never sought recognition, yet his humble service built a legacy of love and care. When we serve others selflessly, without seeking anything in return, our impact goes far beyond whatever we could imagine. And God will lift us up in ways we don't even expect or deserve. Remember, more people will read us than read the Bible. What verse will they see in your face this week? Thank you for the opportunity to share this text with you. We hope to see you within the fellowship sometime soon. God's blessings on you today. Make it a great day.